Welcome to the Brain Soul Success Show, where we learn, explore, and create your powerful positive healing for life. I'm your host, Louise Schwartzwalter. I'm the creator of a 5-part mind, body, soul methodology that clears the subconscious blocks to success. From engaging transformational interviews, brain soul success stories, and the secrets shared by brain and spiritual experts, you will reconnect, revitalize, and transform your powerful life. It's time for you. Well, welcome everyone. Dr. Louise Schwartzwalter here. Welcome to the Brain Soul Success Show, where we learn, explore, and create your powerful positive healing for life. I'm so blessed to be with Christine Knapp Phillips today. She is an amazing, you're a healer, a nurse. You have this beautiful background. And I just love what you're doing in the world, Christine. You're making such a difference for people. I think I'm just going to have you introduce yourself here too and tell us, kind of like your bio, your background.
First of all, thank you so much, Louise, for this opportunity. And I'm just, my history is I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 25 years. And I started out in pediatric oncology and moved to adult oncology. And then when my husband was diagnosed with his cancer, it was just too close to home. So I left my job and pursued graduate school to become a nurse practitioner. And, I have a background in family medicine and college health. And then that quickly diverted to more of a private practice and exploring more natural, holistic ways of addressing the body. And, of course, that came through my own personal health journey. We can get into that later. But, so I'm just basically a holistic, natural nurse that is really focused on environmental toxicity and nutritional deficiencies.
Oh, I just love that. I love your background. I love what you're doing. I know you're making such a difference in the world. And I know that you have a story here too, so what was it that, I know it was your husband too, he went through his cancer, but you went through a transformational health challenge too that affected your brain, affected your life, and even your decision to practice the way you do today. Tell us about that. What happened?
Yes. Well, it initially started in 2013 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at that point, that opened a whole new world for me because I never thought that cancer would be a part of my story. And given my oncology background, I knew that I could not go through sort of that toxic way of supporting the body. Mm-hmm. And I really took the position of identifying and looking at why my body allowed these rogue cells to take over. And from that, I really changed diet, lifestyle, looked at epigenetics, all of those variables that come into play with that. But shortly thereafter, I also learned that I had Lyme disease. And so I was undergoing natural treatment for that. But I only reached and made so many gains. I continued to have neurological symptoms. I was losing my memory, losing my vision. I had very poor cognitive ability. I could barely put together a sentence. It was hard for me to just recall words and honestly to just connect with people. I had an underlying anxiety and I disassociated from the world. And I struggled from 2013 until 2016. And what happened in 2016 was that I learned about mold and mycotoxins in a water-damaged building. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I had been working in a water-damaged building. My office had water-damaged tile, there was water-damaged carpet, but I had no idea this was affecting my health, damaging my cells, my DNA, my mitochondria, and compromising every system within my body with systemic inflammation. My body was really in a cell danger response. And, although I was doing other treatments, for the Lyme disease, the way that mold and mycotoxins suppress your immune system, my body was never able to calm down and regulate to stay on top of these toxins that were impacting me 24/7. Because I also later learned that my home was full of mold and mycotoxins. And, you know, I had a beautiful home, and you would have never known. I lived in my home, you know, for, at that point, it was close to 15 years, and it had never affected me. But, you know, we all have toxic buckets that reach their tipping point. And so I had received a couple of vaccines for work and for travel, and I believe that was sort of a tipping point that made me a bit more susceptible to the mold and mycotoxins within my work and home environment. So once I addressed my home environment, my health really changed. It took, you know, the trajectory of healing and recovery really took off. And I left my job and really focused on supporting my body. And as my home was cleaned up and decontaminated, it reduced my toxic load. I was no longer in that systemic inflammation and cell danger response. And so everything that I had been doing previously really exponentially made so many more gains for my body to be able to recover and regulate and do what it was designed to do. Because, you know, when you're in that cell danger response, there's just chaos and dysregulation. So for me, that was really quite pivotal. And I used a technology called high-tech air in my home, which decontaminated it. And then I really focused on replenishing my body with minerals, mitochondria support, supporting the organs that have been downregulated from this toxicity and inflammation load. And then I took specific binders that were not only binding and removing the toxins, but also were doing some cell repair and giving my cells energy. So I call that my foundational approach, because I really address the body at a foundational level. But yeah, that was really the pivotal point for me, because once I addressed my home, it was like my brain went online again. I had the energy to shower every day. And mind you, I was horizontal for several years, literally laying on my biomat. I had set up juice and food delivery. I had gracious neighbors, you know, who were filling in the gaps for me. I mean, it was a really difficult time for me.
It was a trauma. It was a big trauma.
Correct. And, you know, I had other traumas. I had other losses. You know, my first boyfriend at 15 committed suicide. My sister in 2008 committed suicide. My husband died later on in 2008. I was guardian to a child who went back to, you know, so I have suffered loss and grief and traumas, but nothing affected me on a neurological brain level the way that this mold and mycotoxin issue did. And I was severely compromised. I went from being a highly functional human being to being very non-functional and able to adapt in my environment.
You learned a lot, didn't you? When I think about where you are today, congratulations on your good work and how you addressed your health and the persistence that you had to move through all of that. It also is such a testimony to the fact of how environment is such a piece of the puzzle for health. So, you know, what would you say to people today, to Christine? Well, I guess my question is, what would you say to them if they came in with a problem like Lyme disease? I'm going to guess that you do go to the environment with them. That's a piece of the puzzle that you ask questions about.
Yes, I actually joke that I'm probably the only nurse practitioner who wants to know more about your home environment than any type of lab that you've done for your body, because healing and recovery actually begins at home. And if you have toxins and invisible toxins, such as mold and mycotoxins in your home that are affecting your body and causing the dysregulation, it's going to be very challenging for you to make gains if you're doing a Lyme protocol or some type of autoimmune protocol, because the fact of the matter is the mold and the mycotoxins, they damage the cell, they damage the DNA, they damage the mitochondria, they suppress your immune system, and they create just a chaos. So for me, it makes the most sense that instead of focusing on the diagnosis, let's see if there's toxins that are actually were the trigger for your illness in the first place.
Right, the cause, the actual
The
cause,
cause,
the
correct.
cause. And I learned that too.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's how I moved from Illinois to New Mexico.
Yeah.
It's drier here.
Mm-hmm.
Our home in Illinois, for sinus conditions, I was using a humidifier in the
Mm-hmm.
bedroom.
Yeah.
And in those days, the bedrooms were wallpapered, and
Yeah.
we had purple carpet, like
Uh-huh.
royal purple carpet, and we didn't want
Mhm.
to change it because it was good wool carpet, so I made it work. When
Yeah.
we changed the carpet to sell that house, there was mold under the carpet,
Mhm.
and I
Yes.
had no idea it was there.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
very, very, very common. So I'm a home inspector and a home sleuth first, and I really help people to identify the things that they don't believe are present in their home. It's a hard concept to believe that your home is making you sick. And so that is where I start. I will not work with anybody who's not willing to assess their home, inspect their home, and sort of peel away this most important variable in your health recovery. Because if your home is your toxic trigger, it doesn't matter what supplement, what treatment protocol we put you on, it
Right.
will never trump that toxic exposure. And not many people are aware that there is a genetic haplotyping that 1 in 4 have. And so there really is a genetic piece that makes some far more susceptible and vulnerable to this than others. So
Mhm.
again, I want to make sure that the home is where it needs to be so it supports the body to heal. I want that home to be your healing sanctuary. So it's mold, it's mycotoxins, it's radon, it's limiting the Wi-Fi exposure because that Wi-Fi feeds the mold and the mycotoxins. It's reducing your VOCs and making wise choices. It's minimizing the LED, the blue lights. I mean, there's so many facets to this, but I've found that the mold and mycotoxin piece are really a big part of it. And then it's the Wi-Fi, because most of my mold patients, they develop sort of a hypersensitivity. They're reactive to everything, Wi-Fi, histamines, it's just, but
Mhm.
we've got to eliminate that most important trigger for them.
Right. And then how would you take care of those histamine reactions? Is it
The
supplements?
histamine,
What do you do for that?
well, there's a couple of things that I have found to be really helpful. Minerals are very important. Majority of the population are mineral depleted. Well, we know that magnesium is a mast cell stabilizer. We know that Wi-Fi is really taking too much calcium inside the cell. So mineral balancing is a really important part of this. Quercetin has also been very important. Lemon balm. There is a phototherapy patch that I like to use that's a copper peptide, which has been very helpful. So it really I try to individualize it and tailor to my patient population. Supporting your adrenals is also very important. So, it just kind of depends upon where they're at in their journey, how long they've been on it, the degree of dysregulation. And, I just kind of decide what's going to be the best support. But honestly, what I see is that once we start to address the home and it becomes more of a healing sanctuary where the body just feels like, this feels safe, this feels good, like a lot of these other things go to the wayside. So for me personally, Lyme was not an issue for me once I addressed my home. It was like my immune system was able to come back online, recognize that I have Lyme and co-infections, viruses, and it was able to handle them.
Yes.
So I wasn't having to do this real expensive targeted Lyme treatment every week, IV therapies. Like all of that sort of went to the wayside once I addressed my home environment. So it was really interesting. And if somebody had talked to me, back in 2013, it would have saved me 3 years, almost 4 years of my life.
Yes, I understand. I do, because I do, because it took
So,
me 16, and I can look back on all of the homes that we've lived in. So I left Illinois, that moldy bedroom I described, and then we went to Taos, and Taos was my healing house. It was adobe though. So I remember the kids and I
Uh-huh.
were actually making patches with adobe mud for the laundry room where the laundry room pipe had leaked going into the
Yeah.
washing machine because the wall was ruined because it was adobe.
Yeah.
Right? So we
Yeah.
learned to make our own like adobe. So how much mold was in that house? I have no clue. I was outside a lot there. We hiked. I felt like I was in God's country. It was amazing. You know, it was in the mountains. Because then when we moved here to New Mexico 20 years ago, there was another level of healing that took place when I moved to this house.
Uh-huh.
So what I think is fascinating in terms of this conversation right now is how much environment plays a piece
Yeah.
and how much, you know, my work, you know, I know that, you know, you said yes to yourself and things are changing with you too, but it's the field.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that whether it's your home as the energy field, making it your sanctuary, or your energy field definitely affects your physical body. And that's why both you and I have found that supplements are important and they're a piece of the puzzle, but there's a bigger piece.
Yes. And in my practice, I focus on it's home, it's equipping the home, it's supporting the body, and it's fostering the right mindset. So all throughout my journey, you know, instead of being angry with the diagnoses, I just shifted and I said, I'm going to thank my body because I recognize how we were created and how we were designed. And it's a complex system, but it's actually designed to adapt, to regulate, to regenerate, and to be in a homeostasis, healthy space. So I just continue to feed my mind with thoughts and giving thanks to my cells for doing the healing and the adaptation and the regeneration that was required for my recovery. And I encourage that, you know, in all of my patients. I don't want them to be in a place of anger or fear or avoiding things, because all of that will keep you in sympathetic, which we know the body doesn't heal in sympathetic. It also has very low vibrational frequency. And we know that when the body is in a state of low vibrational frequency, you know, it's very hard to get the healing response that we want.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. And you know, you're I'm the frequency medicine specialist. So,
Yes.
so totally get that.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
believe that raising people's vibration and balancing the vagus nerve, which you're speaking about here, the
Yes.
sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system,
Yes.
to be balanced. Sympathetic, for our listeners here who don't know what that is, that's when you're in fight and flight, you know, when you're like really revved up and you're not able to relax. You know, you can even tell that your breathing is fast at those times, you know. So it's about being in parasympathetic and having a balance there where healing can take place. And then we can rev up the cells with vibration, with frequency too, you know. So there's many ways to get there. Positive mindsets, huge, right?
Yes.
Huge.
Minerals, yes, minerals, positive mindset. I like to do the phototherapy patching is also very helpful to activate the cells. The vagus nerve exercises. So I will oftentimes have my patients gargling twice a day, singing, humming, the good nasal breathing. So there's a lot of things that can be done to support that are not expensive. You know, it can be done in the comfort of your home. So it's just about equipping them and educating them with the right tools.
Right, absolutely. Have you also found this? It's interesting because you speak so much about the home and how important the environment in the home is. I've always felt like when people aren't happy within their home, they're not happy within their body, or vice versa.
Right.
You know,
right.
people will say, well, I don't even know if I want to stay here. I feel like I'm supposed to move, you know, and then I'd be like, that's a clue to me as a practitioner is they're not happy in their home, but their home is synonymous with their own body.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes though, there's that fear component and that trauma. I have, you know, because a lot of my patients are coming from the mold community, and there's a large paradigm of mold avoidance, basically. And, you know, some people are chasing mold avoidance for years and years and not making any recoveries. So I really try and shift my patients to view it as not something that is like unsafe or, you know, There needs to be healing with that concept, because some people will move and move and move and remediate,
Right.
and their home can still be toxic. And in the meantime, they've put their body under tremendous stress, kept them in sympathetic, and really reinforced that trauma limbic loop. So I really try to get people to come to a better place and perspective about their home. Yes, if you're tired with your home and you feel like it's time to move, that's great. But just understand, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be any better from a toxicity standpoint.
Right. Well, it's always about working on ourselves,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know? So I know that when we released for you a few traumas, the losses that you've had in your life, the past grief, there was an opening that happened for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a big shift, and now it's almost like you have an overload of clients and patients is coming, right?
So there has been an influx, and I do feel like that when we sort of clean house within ourselves and we clear out the old, the baggage, the things that are not helping and serving us, the unhealthy attachments, it really does create a new, fresh space for new, fresh connections, relationships, patience, abundance. Like, it just opens it up for us. And sometimes, that can be really scary. But I feel like that oftentimes we all kind of reach this roadblock, this intersection where, we're called to reevaluate and look at this and make some decisions and then pivot. So your program really helped me to do that. Yeah, it's been amazing.
I love watching the transformation in you too. The change that's happened for you since you've said yes to yourself, and because your gift is getting out there so much bigger, and that's really the goal, right? You have all this background, all this talent, such amazing, success stories with the people that you've worked with, where they've been from person to person to person to doctor to doctor to doctor, right? Haven't gotten the help that they wanted. So give us a story. Tell us like one of your a success story, one of your patients.
Okay, all right. I would say the most recent success story is a girl who she was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and she worked with some well-known authored specialists in the environmental illness realm, and they literally have traveled multiple states working with different practitioners. And when they came to me, the first thing I said was, what's going on with your home? Tell me a little bit about your home. Have you done any inspections or to just see? And of course, nothing had been done there. Well, as we pursued down this rabbit hole, we discovered that there was some old leaks. There was evidence of that. There were high mold and mycotoxin levels. And once we got their home equipped, we addressed the leaks, we addressed the negative pressure issues, and was able to decontaminate the house. Her body was able to calm down and regulate. The dizziness, the imbalance spells that she suffered with, the nausea, the feeling like her skin was on fire, the memory issues, the appetite, and just her food issues, all of that has kind of fallen to the wayside. She's sleeping again. She's eating more normal. She's able to walk without having this constant dizzy and imbalance. And we're making gains, and it really, I'm just supporting the home and then supporting her body as we get it to stabilize. And usually it's like a 90 to 120 day period where I start to see really big shifts in my patients, because it really takes time to decontaminate the house and get it where it needs to be. But then at that day 90 to 120, we start to see more significant gains and shifts, and we can go deeper and decide, do we still need to focus on the Lyme, or is her immune system, and we're finding that her immune system is handling some of these other pathogens without having to go into, a really in-depth kill protocol. So I really try to replenish and support the body to keep it energized. I really don't like to do things that are going to create a heavy die off or endotoxin
Mhm.
load, because
Mhm.
a lot of these patients aren't ready for that. So
Right.
when we start to address that home and support the body, get the mineral receptor sites replenished, get the immune system back on, the parasites, the heavy metals, the Lyme, the co-infections, the viruses, they are not as dominant as they used to be. So, and then they start to experience a bit of hope because they've been to numerous practitioners, and because they all come into this with like, yeah, you're just another practitioner. Do you have any idea how much I've spent? It's like, and
Mhm.
especially this girl because she's younger. Um, but once they start to feel better, it
Yes.
gives them a sense of hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So
Yes.
for me, I love helping. I feel like that it really was my calling to be a nurse because my heart just beats most when I'm helping and serving and just being able to improve their level and their quality of life. I mean, I'm so incredibly blessed to do what I do.
You're beaming. You can see your passion. I know that passion and that love that you have for your patients also shines through when you're working with them, and that
Yes.
also is they're part of their healing too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just love how you've turned your life around, and are using what you've learned to help others on such a deeper level. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also such a great metaphor right now, Christine, of the environmental piece and the whole energy field piece.
Yes.
Because, in this pandemic that the whole world is in, we're being called to look beyond our bodies, but we're being called to look out here and to clear this energy of these patterns that don't fit us anymore, that past trauma,
Yes.
and also look within and do our self work. And that's what you're doing with them on such a beautiful way. It's really cool. Really cool. If you had one tip that you wanted to leave us with, or where would you say if someone was at the very beginning, or they're listening to this, or maybe not beginning, but they've been through some practitioners and whatever, what's something they could do on their own right now, even if it's looking at their own home? Um, what would be a tip, just a suggestion, for anyone listening here?
Yeah, I think my biggest tip that I could offer would be to test your home for the mold and mycotoxins.
Mhm.
So I do have a PDF that's available that talks about environmental acquired illness and sort of like my tips on just educating you on what it is, what those symptoms that encompass that diagnosis looks like, as well as steps that you can take with various links. So I want you to test your home. Maybe you want to know whether or not you have the genetic susceptibility. Maybe you're looking for a new home and you need pointers and tips on things to look for that maybe you just aren't aware of. So but I would say really start with your home. Do an ERMI test. Do not waste money on an air test. It's just too limited. These mycotoxins are heavy molecules. They're not going to be floating around in the air.
Mhm.
They're heavier, they're stickier, so they're going to be on surfaces. So this ERMI test, you're going to be sampling old dust within the house.
Mhm.
Um, so that would be my number one tip. That's where I start with everyone. I want them to do a test on their home, and let's just make sure and get some idea of what's happening in your home.
That's a really great tip. I love that. And ERMI is ERMI.
ERMI, which is an environmental relative mold index test. So it looks at
Okay.
indoor and it compares it to the outdoor and it gives you a relative index. Very helpful tool.
Mhm.
Um, I'm more interested in the mold species and the mycotoxins that are showing up because if they're present in your home, they're affecting you. Your body is absorbing them, you're inhaling them. It is a big trigger for autoimmune, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. It can trigger the cancer picture, Lyme disease, co-infections, viruses, parasites, and it can also foster a heavy metal toxicity load. So it's really important to deal with the home.
That's such a great tip. That is such a great tip. I mean, not very many people know about that. So, gosh, you're so completely gifted. And I know that you know all of these different tests, and you take your patients through the battery that they need.
Yes.
What a great tip. Start with that ERMI test. So I so appreciate that, and I appreciate you being with us today on the Brain Soul Success Show and sharing your knowledge and your story with us, Christine. And if you're out there and you've suffered with anything like Lyme disease or mold toxicity, or you don't even know if you have a mold problem, right? Like Christine is saying, check your house and then give her a call, and we will put her information in the links here so you can connect with Christine too, and just gain from her wisdom here. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Christine, for being with us today. Any one last thing or one little sentence, phrase, or anything you want to put out there to our audience today?
Well, I think, as a nurse practitioner who was trained traditionally, my mantra now is be well, be naturally well. So I really want people to just support their body in a natural way that's really going to strengthen it at a foundational level. So get on those minerals, take your mineral baths, soak up your sun, and just support your body in every way naturally.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great day.